a little thumbprint in every TCP IP stack, or in the header of every TCP IP packet that leaves that machine. And that allows moving part number 3. Moving part number 3, the network station, is like a camera in the hallway. And there's a lot of popular monitoring solutions that are out there that do what number 3 does, which is basically it watches all of the inbounding and outbounding traffic from that desktop to the other elements in your infrastructure. So your application servers, your network file locations, any cloud-based resources that you might have, other desktops, et cetera, et cetera. And so we think that's a really important part of the stack. What we believe we bring to the table is the ability to correlate not only what's happening inside of Tyler's desktop, but how Tyler is interacting with the rest of the environment as well. And all of those measurements are written as frequently as you set it up to capture and write back to the database so we can correlate those. So over on the left-hand side, you'll see these different solution modules. Well, all this really is how we see data, right? We're going to either look at it through an assessment set of eyeglasses, or a migration-focused set of eyeglasses, or a diagnostic set. It depends on what phase you're at, in the project lifecycle to determine which one of those screens you would log into. It's about, 119 different reports that we built into Stratusphere to help you make the what do I have and what am I using decisions. And there's some baselines in terms of minimum and maximum and mean number of cores and number of memory that you would need if you were considering VDI. We also do a great job looking at your application and coming up with some pretty concise lists of exactly what users have and what they're consuming. And so all of this intelligence, the intent of it is to arm you to help make those good decisions. And I'll pick on a couple of these categories here. Ages of machines. Perhaps your project and your intent is to take machines that are older than 4 years and repurpose them, turn them into thin clients, and maybe try desktop virtualization. Or maybe your intent isn't anything to do with desktop virtualization. Your intent is actually to determine which machines, if any, are able to have Win 7 loaded on them. Or perhaps it's simply to change something about your application architecture. The good news is that we would rather over-arm you with data and over-arm you with all of the different granular measurements that might come into play than have any blind spots. And so while we might be able to take 2,000 measurements from a desktop population, there certainly will be, depending on your project, there certainly will be ones that you'll focus on more than less. A good example of that is we see a number of organizations around the country doing data migration projects where the simple intent is nothing to do really with VDI, so to speak, but it's to get data off of endpoints into the data center and then maybe dedupe it or something like that. Well, I'd like to know what the collective I/O is of my users today to the local hard drive, because that's going to be the same I/O that's going to happen when they're in the data center, more or less. And so having that kind of visibility, I think, helps us all make, storage vendor choices, storage architecture choices, maybe even high, lows, and mediums for our budget. When we need to go back to the lines of business and ask for money for our project. Oftentimes, it's a good thing to be well armed with the data that backs up some of the apps that we have. So all of these measurements are great, but we wanted to help out a little bit more, and so we came up with some composite metrics, and we call this VDI Fit and VDI UX. And these two are, for the most part, intended to be used if you are, these are baked into the platform. These are intended to help you if you're thinking about either desktop virtualization, or if you started virtualizing desktops, to assist with mathematically understanding what that user's experience is. In that first slide, I said that our goal was to create a reliable computer system that allowed a user to productively do their jobs. Well, how would we know if we're doing that? Different users have different tolerance for pain. I myself could probably stare at an hourglass for 20 minutes before I'll give up and call someone for help. But other users might stare at an hourglass for 30 seconds and say, whoa, 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 something's wrong here. The good news is that when we are watching and monitoring and taking a very granular look at the entire stack of our infrastructure and our desktops, we see things before, perhaps, users call the help desk. And so if something is yellow, that might mean that no one's calling the help desk yet, but they will be shortly. If they're green, well, then for the most part, things are good there. Did we just lose audio by chance? Hopefully folks can hear me. I saw my Citrix control panel blinked a little bit. Can everyone still hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. If anybody's having trouble, write it in on your question form.
Excellent. So the interesting thing is that as we start rolling out any new technology that has to do with desktop, whether we've done the assessment, even if we've done it correctly, as we've come up with our designs and our architecture, as we've started to, I think, add zeros to the scale of any one of these projects, the interesting thing that happens is that when some but I like to focus on alerts that I actually care about. So it might be changes in configuration or changes in application launch times or load times or different elements about infrastructure. I like to be able to see that. Maybe it's a spike or a valley in the network. The good news is, with the software, before, during, or after your project, you can see where those peaks and valleys are. You can drill down and see what users or what machines or what applications are either affected by or affecting the peaks and valleys. A great example is here in storage. I might pick on a peak and say, whoa, what's this peak I see in I/O or read-write rate at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Who's contributing to that? And I look down and I say, oh, it's the following 26 users. What's similar about those users? And I drill down again and say, whoa, they're all using that brand new app we rolled out last Friday. Geez, I go back in time and look at my report. Boy, it didn't have that same I/O, before we came out with this new release of the app. I better call my kind of QA or app dev team and say, hey, gang, I'm noticing some anomalies that we didn't notice before in terms of the I/O that app is driving or consuming. Did you change something? Could you take a look? No one's complaining yet, but I'm looking at the trend here over the last week or day or hour or minute, and I'm getting a little nervous, and it's something that we might want to drill down on. Again, we just think it's much more powerful to have ongoing visibility and to be able to do things proactively versus waiting for things to go wrong. And so kind of drilling down here, I know we've got a couple more minutes. And in the assessment phase, discovery and inventory is a huge part of it. A lot of us know what apps we own, but when we actually start looking down and drilling down and saying, okay, well, not only what apps do I own, but who's using what apps and what machines are the largest consumers or the largest offenders, and how complex are these apps? Are these apps likely candidates to perhaps be presented back into the environment in a new and different way? And we also look at the configuration of the machine. Is something changing? Is something anomalous about a certain group or user population? Am I giving them way too much storage? Out of band. And when they somebody, it could be an app, when an application is doing something different and its peer group, or a user is doing something different or consuming something different in the peer group, or a network segment, or machine, or a time of day. Boy, I thought I'd have a lot of I/O storm or boot storms in the beginning part of the day. Boy, I'm seeing this very bizarre activity at 2:15. Well, maybe 2:15 is when payroll does their processing or something. Of course, something a bit silly, but you get the point, which is all of this stuff counts. And if we can measure it, then we can manage around it. And if we can measure it, then we're typically not surprised. And our belief, again, is that being able to do that beforehand through the use of an assessment arms you very, very well to say, okay, well, this